I'm Dr. Sandra Brown. I'm an ophthalmologist in North Carolina, and I have no financial conflicts of interest. I'd like to talk to you today about Placentas from Strangers, Part 1, Dry Eye Patients and Scam Pharma. This PowerPoint is pretty satirical, so if you've listened to my other PowerPoints, you don't think I'm funny, you don't like the sound of my voice, this PowerPoint may not be for you. Also, it does assume that you have a certain amount of knowledge about biological eye drops, which are derived from human placenta or amniotic fluid, and how these eye drops are supposed to benefit the health of your cornea. If this isn't you, you should start with biological eye drops, clearing up misconceptions. First, let's talk about Real Pharma. Dompé. Well, I had never heard of Dompé. To me, it sounded like a food. Okay, it's not a food. Dompé is the manufacturer of Oxervate, and we're going to talk quite a bit about Oxervate so you understand what Real Pharma does when it wants to make a real biological eye drop of real value. And I'm going to refer to Oxervate as Oxervate. For medical conferences, generally you try to refer to a drug by its pharmaceutical name or its generic name, not its trade name, but I have no clue how to pronounce that word. So I'm just calling it Oxervate. Has the word germ in it. Does it kill germs? Nope, it actually treats neurotrophic keratitis or keratopathy, which is a very challenging condition whereby the cornea loses innervation, and the lack of innervation decreases the stimulation for the corneal surface to regenerate and renew itself, thereby leading to loss of the superficial epithelium and opening the cornea up to a whole host of problems, including infection, permanent scarring, and warping. And you can see the effect of Oxervate at baseline. The purple circle is the entire cornea, and the green area occupying the lower portion is the area with a lack of epithelium. And 4 weeks later, that green area is almost completely resolved. Oxervate is recombinant nerve growth factor. What are recombinant proteins? You get a recombinant protein by teaching old bacteria new tricks. My bacteria know how to hold still and go lay down. But smart bacteria can be taught how to make proteins. Specifically, genetically engineered E. coli can be taught to secrete recombinant proteins which can be used to treat human diseases. Where did this crazy idea start from? Well, it started as mad scientist farmers in the 1970s and 80s, and nowadays we call it Genentech and Dompé and many other legitimate pharmaceutical companies who are harvesting E. coli's ability to generate these extremely useful proteins in commercially available quantities. So humanity's new good friend is mutant E. coli. The first recombinant protein secreted by E. coli was humulin, which is structurally identical to human insulin. And Genentech commercialized this. It was approved in 1982 specifically for the treatment of diabetes. A couple of decades later, we have Oxervate, recombinant human nerve growth factor, commercialized by Dompé, which was approved in 2018 to treat neurotrophic keratitis. If you look down below in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see one of the ways that scientists diagram proteins. And to me, it looks like Oxervate and endogenous, which is to say natural or human-produced nerve growth factor, are identical. Oxervate is fully FDA approved. My new favorite website is DailyMed. If you go to DailyMed and type in Oxervate, this is what will come up. You'll see human prescription drug label, which means it's approved for use in humans, and a marketing status of biologic licensing application. Application does not mean that an application has been filed but not approved. This is FDA language that means we're satisfied that you have demonstrated to us that this drug is beneficial for the treatment of neurotrophic keratitis, and we're allowing you to market and sell it in the United States. But pay attention to this. What's approved is not just the drug, but actually a kit. And there's a lot in this kit. This is a photograph of the daily materials needed to give yourself Oxervate. And there are actually 19 separate steps for installation. Notice the alcohol swabs there. Oxervate also has pretty specific instructions for how to store it. At the pharmacy, they want it frozen. When you take it home with you, you can keep it in your refrigerator, but given how much it costs, frankly, it would be in my freezer. You take out a vial and you're going to use 1 vial a day. That vial ideally would stay in a refrigerator, although if you're, once again, I don't know, on a road trip and don't have a cooler, or you just can't be bothered, you can leave it out on the countertop. But after 12 hours, you have to discard that vial. So basically, this is a thaw it, use it, toss it medication. And with very carefully defined dosing, 268 every 2 hours, 6 times a day for 8 weeks. Real Pharma is not always big pharma or evil pharma. So I went off to the webpage to take a look at what Oxervate had to say for itself. And the first thing I noticed was that, pretty much front and center, they had a list of legitimate medical references. I recognize these titles as being the type of title that you would give to a legitimate medical article. And you may notice that a number of them have internet in brackets, which is to make the article accessible through the internet as opposed to having to get your hands on it through an electronic or physical medical library. Also on the homepage is the safety information, and this is the same safety information that is in the package label. So they're not trying to hide anything. And they have a great video support for installation that helps you through those 19 steps. And did I mention, this drug is actually FDA approved. Now let's talk about Scam Pharma. Regenerative medicine is the hot new buzzword in medicine and in self-care, which I think should be subtitled Misleading Patients for Profit. Dry eye patients are an ideal market segment for scam regenerative medicine treatments. They are often desperate, accustomed to high out-of-pocket costs for drops, ointments, goggles, humidifiers, special CPAP masks that cost more, you name it. There are broad online communities which create an opening for peer influence, unless there is moderation. And dry eye patients are really accustomed to the whole "it takes a while to work" mantra, which will encourage them to continue with long-term use without expecting any kind of short or medium-term benefit. And what's the product of Scam Pharma that I'm talking about? Biological eye drops. These eye drops are alleged to contain proteins and other substances derived from human reproductive tissues or snails, and which are marketed to improve ocular surface diseases. They're often described as like autologous serum tears without the hassle. Autologous serum tears are tears which are derived from the patient's own blood. You donate blood to a compounding pharmacy, that blood is processed and returned to you in bottles where it has been diluted and prepared and packaged for you to use it as an eye drop. So what exactly is being regenerated? These are some quotes from the webpage of manufacturer number 1. Their eye drops are anti-inflammatory, talk to the immune system, cause cells to regenerate or proliferate, improve wound healing, and improve your immune response. Sounds terrific. Manufacturer number 2 introduces growth factors, works towards regenerating tears, and provides growth factors. And here is the jaw dropper. Manufacturer number 2 says that clinical trials are not required. If you don't believe me, there's the screenshot. This particular manufacturer states that their product contains exosomes, and here's what the FDA has to say about exosomes. They may claim that these products do not fall under the regulatory provisions for drugs and biologic products, but that is simply untrue. And untrue is a pretty straightforward word for any government entity. So it's finally time to talk about placentas from strangers. On the left, a very fresh placenta. On the right, a not so fresh placenta. How do you turn a placenta into a biological eye drop? You have to collect it from the hospital, transport it to the processing facility. There are a variety of proprietary ways to make this conversion, but they generally involve the same steps. First, you have to chop the placenta up into more manageable pieces. I don't want to say bite-sized. Then you have to freeze it, grind it in basically an industrial magic bullet, add liquid, maybe let it sit there for a while like the soak cycle in your washing machine, centrifuge it to get all the crud out, decant the liquid, filter it, test for germs, somewhere along the lines in that production process, dilute it, pour it into bottles, screw the caps on, package it, and ship it. Let's consider a different product, a mocha frappuccino. An awful lot of the production steps are similar or identical. You collect and transport the coffee beans, they're roasted instead of being frozen, grind them up, add liquid, filter the liquid, get your cup of espresso, decant it into the plastic cup, dilute it with various ingredients, put the cap on, that counts as bottling, and hand it over. Making biological eye drops out of a placenta and making a mocha frappuccino out of coffee beans represent very similar industrial processes. Let's compare this to oxyrvate. With oxyrvate, you have a bacteria that you've taught with great difficulty to produce a recombinant nerve growth factor, which is functionally identical to endogenous nerve growth factor. This is a true bioengineered protein. One of our manufacturers claims that their product is, quote, bioengineered protein based. But turning a placenta into eye drops and calling this bioengineered is an insult to laboratory scientists everywhere. In one case, you're making a bioengineered protein drug. In the other case, you're making a mocha frappuccino, only you're starting with different ingredients. And you've really got to ask yourself, what's in that bottle? Could it possibly be one tiny drop of placenta extract into a giant vat of saline and glycerin? The manufacturers are a little bit coy about this. It's certainly not on their product package insert. The French will talk about their fine wine and say, only God knows what's in this bottle. When I talk about biological eye drops, I say, God only knows what's in this bottle. Even the manufacturers don't know what's in that bottle. That's why they can only give you a partial listing of growth factors. I don't think it's because they didn't want to list all of them. I think it's because they don't know what they all are. We have to take an off-ramp for just a moment on how to spot a fake medical reference. It's pretty easy. First, if the owner of the biological eye drop manufacturing company is an author, it's probably a fake medical reference. If the article is classified as a white paper, it's pretty fake. These are commissioned and often written by the manufacturer, and they pay a famous doctor to use their name as the author on the article. If the study method consists of a literature search, there are no human subjects involved, and there is no original laboratory or animal research involved, these are all fake medical references. These articles are often published in what I call pay-to-publish journals. A little bit harder to identify this as a layperson, but basically it's an online journal where you pay them a certain amount of money, a couple $100, a couple $1,000, and they publish it, and they say nice things about it like it's peer-reviewed, but it's junk. Let's run through the differences between Real Pharma and Scam Pharma. First of all, with Real Pharma, you know what's in the bottle, exactly what's in the bottle. You know how it's manufactured in excruciating detail. The manufacturer may not be sharing these details with the world, but they're definitely sharing them with the Food and Drug Administration. You know exactly how it works and what diseases it has been proven to treat. You know what the adverse events are. In the case of oxyrvate, it's right there on the homepage. There have been actual clinical trials on humans. The drug sponsor respectfully fears the Food and Drug Administration, and the FDA has approved this drug product under a biologic licensing application. And there are real medical references. If there's none of the above, you're dealing with Scam Pharma. Other features of Scam Pharma, they're advertised as having potential or possible benefits. The manufacturer will evade or misquote the Food and Drug Administration, and their evidence primarily consists of testimonials from patients and fake medical references. So, you think placenta's good? Okay, rubbing it on your skin is one thing. Dripping it in your eye is something else. Clinical trials on oxyrvate were conducted on 151 patients. There were 2 separate trials. They were randomized, multicenter, double-masked, vehicle-controlled. You cannot get better than that. This is what Dompé had to go through to get oxyrvate approved. What does manufacturer number 2 have to say for itself? Well, clinical trials are not required, to their mind, so they did provide a pre-released product to a number of patients and determined that the results were promising through patient testimonials. As of May 22nd, there were 15 testimonials. So take your pick. 151 patients in scientifically conducted clinical trials or 15 testimonials. Be smart, believe real science. And this is a diagram of human nerve growth factor, which was discovered in 1950 by Professor Rita Levi-Montalcini, who later received the Nobel Prize in Medicine for her many decades of work on nerve growth factor. I hope this information has been of benefit to you and has given you some tools for protecting yourself from Scam Pharma and from the false claims of manufacturers of biological eye drops.